Welcome to my viewers. Tonight I want to share with you a chilling story from the shadows of history, one that has haunted a small town in Maine for over 5 decades. It's about a young girl named Kathy Marie Morton, who vanished without a trace on a September night in 1971, leaving behind unanswered questions and a family's desperate hope for closure. September 24th, 1971, a date forever etched in the memories of those who knew her, yet a day that would mark the beginning of a mystery that has never been solved. Kathy was just 16 years old, a bright and vibrant high school junior in Portland, Maine. She had dreams and plans like any girl her age, but that day, the plans she made would be shattered in ways no one could imagine. Kathy was excited for the dance that evening, a typical teenage ritual, filled with laughter, music, and the promise of a night to remember. Before the dance, she wanted to take care of some small errands, the kind that make a young girl feel grown up and ready for the night ahead. She asked her father for a ride, asking to be dropped off on Cumberland Avenue. She needed to pick up a pair of pantyhose and some toothpaste, mundane, everyday items, but in that moment they marked the last connection to normal life. Her father obliged, never imagining this would be the last time he'd see his daughter. After her stop on Cumberland Avenue, Kathy went to a music store on Forest Avenue to visit a friend. She told her friend that she'd see her later at the dance, her voice calm and certain. Then, with the innocence of youth, she said she planned to walk home, 1.5 miles through quiet streets, a distance she had traveled many times before. But that walk home never happened. Kathy was last seen on Forest Avenue, walking away from the music store, clutching a small brown leather Mexican purse. Inside were the simple things she'd bought her house key, 2 tubes of toothpaste, and a tiny bit of cash. It was a modest bundle, unassuming, yet it carried the weight of a life that would soon be swallowed by mystery. As evening turned to night, and Kathy didn't arrive home for dinner, worry began to creep into her parents' hearts. Something was wrong. The night stretched on with no word, no sign, and finally her parents made the call that every parent dreads. They reported Kathy missing. In the days that followed, fragments of sightings trickled in, whispers of a stolen blue Cadillac, of a young man named Lester Everett seen with Kathy. Some believed she left willingly, perhaps even happy, but others saw a darker side emerging. Weeks after her disappearance, there were reports of Kathy, Lester, and another young man, Ronald Reed Purley, in a remote and desolate stretch of Aroostook County, a place far from the familiarity of Portland streets. This remote wilderness held secrets, and the 3 young people seen there only deepened the mystery. Lester was eventually found alone. He said he didn't know where Kathy was, and the trail grew cold. Yet one garage employee in Fort Fairfield, Aroostook County, later remembered seeing the trio when they came to buy tires for the stolen Cadillac. The employee's memory was vivid, a disturbing image of Ronald controlling Kathy's movements, guiding her to and from the bathroom with a hand firmly on the back of her neck. The protective gesture was chilling, not of care but of domination and fear. Further sightings crossed borders onto the Tobique Reserve, where witnesses claimed to have seen Lester and Kathy together for several days in September. Eventually they traveled to a farm in the Mars Hill area of Aroostook County, where Kathy was forced into the grueling labor of potato harvesting at McBride's farm. Here Kathy's spirit began to fracture under the weight of her captivity. She was reportedly distrustful of Lester, pleading constantly to be allowed to return home. She confided in a teenage girl working alongside her, sharing her fears, her worries that her parents must be frantic, searching for her. The girl remembered Kathy crying often, her eyes wide with fear, her body tense around the other men on the farm. She was trapped, desperate and alone. Lester's patience snapped. On the night of September 29, while the other workers sat around a bonfire, Lester drove the stolen Cadillac with Kathy riding beside him. She begged him to take her home, to end the nightmare, but he refused. Instead, he took her across the border, back to the Tobique Reserve, leaving her in the hands of Ronald. The potato harvest came to an end, and Lester left for Florida with others to pick oranges. He never came back to Maine. When questioned later, he claimed ignorance about Kathy's fate. His silence added layers of suspicion and sorrow. Ronald Reed Purley was a known criminal, convicted of rape and home invasion, and long considered the prime suspect in Kathy's disappearance. Yet he refused to cooperate, even when police offered immunity from prosecution if he revealed what had happened. Theories swirled. Did Lester kill Kathy and hide her body in the endless forests of Aroostook County? Some dismissed this, noting that Ronald's relatives said Lester dropped Kathy at their home, claiming one of their own had harmed her. But Ronald's family also remained silent, stonewalling investigators. Despite efforts, police never gathered enough evidence to charge anyone or search Ronald's family home. Kathy's trail grew colder by the day. In 1983, a hunter stumbled across a skeleton deep in the woods near Smyrna, Maine, surrounded by women's clothing. Some believed this was Kathy's final resting place, a grim end to a heartbreaking story. But the hunter couldn't relocate the spot, and the bones disappeared without a trace, leaving hope and heartbreak in equal measure. At the time of her disappearance, Kathy was a junior at Deering High School, a girl described by classmates as happy, full of life, and with no reason to run away. Her father, who held on to hope for decades, passed away, and her mother remains alive, a quiet beacon of hope waiting for answers, for justice, for peace. This case remains open, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the dark corners where truth can hide. Thank you for listening. If you found this story compelling, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these stories alive and brings light to forgotten mysteries. The Vanishing of Mary Virginia Carpenter, a haunting mystery that defied time. Imagine watching someone step out of a taxi in the dark of night, and then they simply disappear without a trace, as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. This is the chilling story of Mary Virginia Carpenter, a 21-year-old girl whose last known moments would spark decades of unanswered questions and restless hearts. Mary Virginia Carpenter was no ordinary young woman. Born and raised in Texarkana, Texas, she had dreams that stretched far beyond her small hometown. In the summer of 1948, Mary made a bold move. She boarded a train bound for Denton, Texas, a journey lasting 6 long hours, to start a fresh chapter at Texas Women's University. The decision wasn't random. Mary had left the University of Arkansas behind, seeking a new path and preparing to train as a laboratory technician in the fall. But fate had other plans. On the evening of Tuesday, June 12, 1948, Mary arrived at the Denton train station. The clock had just edged toward 9:00 p.m. as she climbed into a waiting taxi. Edgar Ray Zachary, the cab driver, would later recall the events with an eerie clarity. He dropped Mary off at Brackenridge Hall, a dormitory on the university campus. Around 9:30, she handed him a ticket for her trunk, her luggage waiting at the station, and paid him $1 to pick it up the next day. That was the last transaction Edgar would have with Mary. But what happened next is where the story turns cold. After stepping out of the taxi, Mary didn't head inside to check into her dorm as planned. Instead, Edgar saw her approach 2 young men standing near a yellow convertible, a car he believed to be a Pontiac. One man was tall, the other stocky. Mary spoke to them with familiarity, as if these were old friends. Edgar assumed it was a casual reunion and drove away, unaware this brief encounter would become the last confirmed sighting of Mary Virginia Carpenter. She never checked into her dorm. No one ever heard from her again. The shockwaves spread quickly. Mary's family was devastated. Some of her former boyfriends speculated she might have run off with a lover, as Mary was known to become infatuated easily. But those closest to her dismissed the idea. Mary was devoted to her family, and her future disappearing without a word was completely out of character. She had even ended a recent engagement just weeks earlier, making her intentions clear. She was moving forward, not running away. Police quickly turned to the people closest to her. Kenny Branham, her ex-fiancé, was the first person to report her missing. He cooperated fully with investigators and passed 2 polygraph tests. He insisted Mary had no reason to leave or disappear. No secret lover, no enemies, No reason to abandon her life and dreams. Attention then shifted to Edgar, the taxi driver. Investigators dug into his background and found a disturbing trail. Edgar had a record of petty crimes and a reputation for violent behavior. In 1957, he was even charged with attempted rape, though the charges were dropped after the victim declined to press them. His wife initially said he was home the night Mary vanished, but a decade later admitted she had lied. He didn't arrive home until well after midnight. Despite suspicion and dark rumors, Edgar passed 2 polygraph tests related to Mary's disappearance and was never charged. He died in 1984, leaving the mystery unresolved. But Mary's disappearance was not the only darkness haunting the area. In the cold months of 1946, Texarkana was terrorized by a brutal killer stalking secluded lovers' lanes, quiet spots where young couples sought privacy in their cars. 5 victims, all young and close to Mary's age, were murdered in these shadowed spots. The crimes remained unsolved, attributed to a figure dubbed the Texarkana Phantom Killer. Mary knew 3 of the victims personally. Some wondered if her disappearance was connected, a sinister link to this unseen predator, but investigators never found concrete evidence to tie her to the murder. Decades passed with no answers. In 1998, a chilling tip came in. 2 men had allegedly raped and killed Mary shortly after she vanished, then buried her body in a dam near the Texas Women's University campus. Both suspects were deceased by then, but police searched the site thoroughly. Nothing was found. Through the years, sporadic leads and possible sightings have surfaced, but all have ended in dead ends. Mary's parents have since passed away, leaving only 3 cousins to carry the flickering hope of closure. Mary Virginia Carpenter's story remains a haunting riddle. A bright young woman, whose future was stolen in the quiet shadows of a summer night, leaving only whispers and questions in her wake. If Mary's story left you feeling unsettled or curious, please make sure to like, comment your thoughts or theories, and subscribe for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries like this one. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and maybe one day someone watching will help bring answers to light. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and remember, sometimes the past holds secrets that refuse to die. The vanishing of Alvin Matlock, a mystery that haunts Spokane. Some people just disappear without a trace, but what really happens to them after that moment? This is the story of Alvin Matlock, an Army veteran who vanished one cold spring night in 1951, leaving behind more questions than answers and a family desperate for closure. At just 21 years old, Alvin Matlock was the kind of man who lived on the edge of the wild, a veteran, a loner, and an outdoorsman who found refuge in the dense woods of Spokane County, Washington. His home wasn't a typical suburban house, but a solitary cabin perched on Brown's Mountain, a place where the forest whispered secrets and shadows stretched long across moss-covered trails. It was here, amid towering pines and endless silence, that Alvin last walked and then disappeared. Alvin's story begins like so many others in that era, a young man fresh from war, trying to find his place in the wild. His family in Spokane knew him as quiet but kind, a man who preferred the company of trees and wildlife to that of bustling crowds. In March of 1951, Alvin had reached out to his family, a rare act, to share the exact location of his cabin, a detail they'd never had before. It was a beacon of hope, a thread they could hold on to. But then, as spring ripened into summer, Alvin simply vanished. His younger brother, Clyde Matlock, was only 12 when Alvin disappeared, but those memories carved deep scars. Now 83 years old, Clyde still carries a flicker of hope, a hope that one day his brother's remains will be found and the mystery finally laid to rest. The first red flag came on Thanksgiving Day, 1951. Alvin was expected at the family dinner, a gathering that should have been filled with warmth and laughter, but he never showed. Their mother's worry grew like a dark cloud, compelling her to drive through the winding, forest-lined roads up to Brown's Mountain. What she found only deepened the mystery. Alvin's cabin was eerily empty. No sign of him, no notes, no explanations. His truck and his motorcycle, both gone. A neighbor delivered a chilling piece of information. Alvin had quietly packed up and moved to Alaska. It was a convenient theory, one the family clung to for years, wanting to believe that Alvin had simply sought a fresh start, far away from the small town they all knew. After all, Alvin was a rugged outdoorsman, and Alaska's wild frontier wasn't such a stretch for someone like him. Yet, as months became years without any contact or a word from Alvin, the hope began to wane. Behind the closed doors of whispered gossip and hushed speculation, a darker tale began to emerge. There were rumors, some cruel, others chilling, that Alvin had been involved in a secret affair with a married woman. The story went that the husband had discovered the betrayal, and a violent confrontation followed. Neighbors allegedly recalled hearing desperate cries for help coming from Alvin's cabin late at night, only to be met with silence thereafter. Some believed the woman, in a fit of rage or fear, had shot Alvin, and the couple had hidden the truth, leaving him to die in the shadows of those dense woods. But there was no body, no bloodstains, no evidence, only hushed conversations and rumors that the police were powerless to act upon. Without physical proof, the theory remained nothing more than a dark whisper on the wind. Alvin's supposed move to Alaska was another puzzle piece that didn't fit. The local authorities had no records of him ever registering or living there, no official sightings, no work history, no address. It was as if Alvin had vanished from the earth itself. Among those who suspected something wasn't right was Clyde. Though still a boy at the time, his instincts told him the story the neighbor told was too neat, too tidy. That neighbor, who first mentioned Alaska, soon drew suspicion, a suspicion that lingered like a shadow over the year. In 2016, decades after Alvin disappeared, Clyde and his wife Patricia attended a groundbreaking event hosted by the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office, the county's first ever gathering dedicated to locating and identifying missing persons. The event offered families a rare opportunity to submit police reports, provide DNA and dental records, and share photographs, all in the hope of finally finding closure. For Clyde, it was an emotional step, a fragile thread of hope in a mystery that had haunted his entire life. Patricia had become a sort of amateur detective herself, tirelessly digging through old leads, talking to anyone who might have known something about Alvin's fate. But every lead dissolved into dead ends. Every witness, every story seemed to slip through their fingers like smoke. At the event, Clyde handed over photographs of Alvin, images frozen in time, smiling, unaware of the fate that would follow. He submitted DNA samples in the hope that if Alvin's remains were ever discovered, they could finally be identified and laid to rest. Alvin Matlock's disappearance is more than just a cold case. It's a lingering question mark in the heart of a family, a reminder that sometimes the wild woods don't just hold beauty, they hold secrets that refuse to be uncovered. What really happened on Brown's Mountain that night? Did Alvin truly run away to Alaska to start over? Or was he a victim of something far darker? And why has no trace of him ever been found? If you have any information or leads about Alvin Matlock, please reach out to the Spokane County authorities. Every piece of the puzzle mattered. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us uncover and share these haunting mysteries. Until next time, stay curious and never stop searching for the truth.